unaccompanied alien children. And that is a huge issue. But also, we have record high numbers of other than Mexicans being apprehended at the border. These are people that are coming from states like Syria that have substantial connections back to terrorist regimes and terrorist operations. So we're seeing record high, historic high numbers of these individuals being apprehended.
We have heard the mainstream media lead stories now for weeks. The flood of mostly young illegal immigrants pouring across the American west and southwestern borders. The first take from some is about this being a humanitarian issue and how America cannot turn its back on people of any age seeking a better life. But the national security side of the debate cannot be ignored. For while Border Patrol and local law enforcement are dealing with thousands of people seeking shelter, what about those who are seeking something much more potentially nefarious? Joining us here in studio from PoliticalHype.com and our political strategist, Anna Mancuso, joins us. And we also welcome in another of our political strategy team from the Chatterton Group, Joe Lestingi, joins us today. Joe, thank you very much for joining us. Anna, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's go ahead and start right there, because there seems to be a discussion now that is growing that, and you heard Rick Perry, and Joe, I'm going to ask you to pine in on this first here. You heard Rick Perry talk about the potential for terrorists, for Syrian connections, for those coming across the border that are not simply just young people seeking some sort of asylum or refuge here in the United States. Is that not at least a fair possibility to consider?
I think it is fair in the sense that it may be plausible, but I also think it is not at all the case. I am a little shocked. I think there's a bit of a straw man that he has put out there to sort of distract from the real situation, which is that these are primarily children that need our help, or at least need some care. Most illegal immigrants, if they're going to come in, why would they come in through Mexico when our largest land border is Canada? I just don't think that this is a realistic situation that the governor's put forward.
Well, hold on a second. I'm going to have to, and Marianne, I'm going to give you a chance to weigh in here, but I think I'm going to have to weigh in on that first, because we're talking about South Americans who are coming up from South America who are being brought by land, so it's not as if they can take a boat and come through Canada and come down. They are taking what you would call the overland route,
He mentioned
correctly?
Syrians, though, and Syrians would have to travel halfway around the world.
Okay, so we're talking about the Syrians. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'll give you that. They can come in from there as well. Marianne, I'll let you go ahead and respond now.
Yeah, you know, I think that Rick Perry has somewhat of a point. We have to be ever vigilant. Our borders are just wide open, and the government is not doing anything to step in and close the borders. Rather, as you're saying, that we need to take care of these children that are crossing over from Mexico. And so I think that there is a valid point to be made.
I'll also bring this into this part of the discussion, Joe, as we talk about this, because you talk about the potential of terrorists coming in from Canada, the largest land mass that we have. However, is it not also fair to consider that with the flood that is being put upon local law enforcement here, Border Patrol, border security, any sort of American law enforcement, that they simply have their hands so full at this point that things are going to start slipping through the cracks sooner or later, and it is absolutely positive to think that there may be something slipping through here, more than just one or two people. Isn't that a possibility?
Well, I would say that the possibility of that has never changed in the past decade. This has been a situation we've been debating for years. If Congress could get off their butts a little bit, I would have to say, and deal with immigration reform that this country so desperately needs, then these Border Patrol agents can focus on stopping the bad guys and instead of dealing with these children.
I think it's ridiculous that you're putting the ownership on Congress, because as we know, it's the president who's turning this into a completely welcome wagon, and he's not doing anything. He's ignoring the Constitution to beef up Border Patrol and secure our borders the way that it needs to be taken care of.
Well, I don't think the Constitution necessarily says anything about border control in it, but I will say this. Congress's job is to pass laws, and the president's job is to enforce them. And we all agree that the
look, Congress can't pass anything. The one thing that you and I can agree on is that Congress agrees that the way the administration handled the Bergdahl release was inappropriate, and that's the only thing that they've agreed on for the past few years since Obama's been in the White House. Right now, we need the White House to step up and say this is absolutely wrong, and we need to do something right now.
But he's also deported more Hispanics that are illegal in America than any previous administration. So we can give him credit.
So it's okay for him to turn a blind eye right now because he's been the one president that's deported more illegals than any other president behind him? It's okay for him to let this happen now?
I don't understand where he's supporting illegal immigrants.
He's not doing anything about it, so he is supporting it. Until you do something, you are supporting it.
He is handling this situation. I'm afraid I missed the premise a little bit here. The children, which have no parents, we have to do something with them. We can't just put them back in the desert. That's not an option.
We need to send them back where they came from.
And that's what he's trying to say is these are children. I mean, we have to have some compassion for a 6-year-old that just got dragged against their will, at least not to their knowledge, across the border they didn't even know existed.
Okay, but hang on a sec, Joe, and I think I'm going to try and put this a little back on track here for this.
Sure.
There are still those who will say that what you have here are a tremendous amount of human beings crossing the border. Nothing is being done. There are people who are asking the administration, and I think it's a fair question to ask, why are we keeping them here? Why are we not attempting to return them? Why are we overloading our systems at this point with all of these people? We can't handle it, I think, is what a lot of people are even saying on the ground. So isn't that fair to ask as to why the administration is just sitting, waiting, and not doing anything except accepting them and keeping them here? Fair.
I think it's fair to say that the system is broken and it is overloaded. No one disagrees with that. I think the three of us can agree on that. And what I would say in counter to your point, which is that he's doing nothing, I think that's a bit of an understatement. He has done more than previous administrations have. And listen, this isn't a problem that's been just popped up in the past year or even in just his presidency. We've been talking about immigration reform since well before the turn of the century, and we just can't get Congress to work to find a reasonable solution, which I think that's what America wants, is Congress to get together and fix this problem by streamlining our system, having a program in which that doesn't get backlogged, but also can strengthen the border. I don't think anyone disagrees with that, but border agents dealing with this small stuff right now because there's no system that works and that the system is broken is occupying too much of their time.
So as a result of that, we have to allow these kids to come in and then we have to actually take responsibility for them because Congress, according to you, can't get their act together. I mean, it's no surprise that Congress is having a difficult time. They have a 16% approval rating. What do you want from them?
Well, I want them to do their job, and that's why their approval
And that's what we want for the White House, too. I mean, absolutely. We want the White House to do their job effectively as Congress.
Listen, I would say, though, that part of the problem, too, is that these children are already across the border when we catch them. So it's not like we are letting them into the country and then, oh, well, come on in and then we'll deal with you.
No, but we are keeping them here. We are keeping them here.
There's no way to patrol the Rio Grande 24 hours a day.
Well,
we are keeping them here. We are feeding them. We are clothing them. We are doing whatever we can in the humanitarian fashion to make sure that they are certainly taken care of. You still have, and again, what I continue to hear here is this political football back and forth, which is Congress do something, Congress do something, the president do something. Joe, Mariana, we've been here before. We hear the same thing every single time, but now we have, Joe, can we not agree that this is a real crisis situation, worse than we've seen at any time in our current history? So something has to be done. You've got to have somebody take some decisive action, and I think what's happening, you must agree with me, even from the left, that there is no decisive action being taken.
Well, the president his hands are tied by the law. He has to enforce the law. He doesn't get to make law.
Well, that's convenient, Joe. That's the first time he wants to adhere to the law.
And that's what he's doing. I mean, we need more funding for border troops. We need more funding for the wall. But none of that has made it through Congress because Congress can't do that. The president can't just cut a personal check for this stuff.
Really? He can release prisoners of war from over in Afghanistan without even talking to Congress. So you're going to tell me the president can't do anything?
Well,
That's
he's
ridiculous.
the commander-in-chief. He's in charge of our military. He is the buck stops with him when it comes to our soldiers and our troops.
Well, then shouldn't the buck stop with him with our border patrol? Something has to be done, and we need an overhaul of INS, and you have to agree with that.
Well, yes, INS needs to be reworked, and so does the Border Patrol, but that all has to be done through Congress. Unfortunately, they have to pass the law to give that.
What about under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution? The states have some say in this, too. States can
not
do
on
things.
national borders, they don't. Unfortunately, they have say in their borders with fellow states, but when it comes to the federal border, that is federal law, and
Do
Congress
we not have
has to
states
act.
that border Mexico?
Even the states that border Mexico, they are in charge of dealing with their state matters. Governor Perry knows as well as anybody else that he's the executive director of the state of Texas. He is not dealing with the border in Arizona or New Mexico. But he can deal with his border,
right?
Sorry?
He can deal with his border, and he can ensure that it is secure as necessary. And once that happens, then you have the other states fall in line, and then eventually Congress and everyone in D.C. would pay attention.
If we could get states to work together like that, that would be great, but that's why we elect congressmen from those states.
Okay, I've only got about 30, 40 seconds left. Joe, can we at least, as we bring a close to this, end of this segment, of course, we're going to have to do this again. We have so much more to talk about here. We could go on like this for hours. But would you not agree, at least from the left, that the president is not doing enough?
No, I disagree. I think the president is doing a good job as the executor here. He unfortunately has his hands tied. Congress has to chip in here. They have to come together. This constant partisan fighting that is holding up real immigration reform has got to stop. They've got to come together and do their job.
Well,
and they have to give him the tools.
It would seem to me that if you're talking about that, then we are once again talking about both sides finally getting together and at least trying to talk from time to time.
Which is a big statement, right?
Joe, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. We're all out of time, but thank you very much. I think we can continue this maybe and perhaps have 3 or 4 days worth of this, and I think it'll be very good discussion. Joe, thank you very much for your time. And Mariana, thank you so very much for your time. And again, we'll have you back. Trust me, this will continue to go on. All right, you've heard us talk about it. Now you talk about it to us on social media and tell us what you think via Twitter, via email, via Facebook. Tell us what you think about this. And who needs to start doing something sooner or later? Can we just let this sit here and not worry about it? Of course not, because here on Midpoint, we question everything.
Do you own